Hello everyone, good to see all of you in today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm broadcasting to you from Budapest, Hungary, Central Europe. The time here right now is 3 p.m. This is usually the start of these classes. Again, good to see all of you in class. Hi Sarah, hi Amjad, hi Shabin. Today we're continuing with our course session number 20. Of course, the date today is the 21st. And our materials, as usual, are coming from our websites at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. So please do be sure to go there, join the course, check it out. Lots of help there for you to get nice high band scores on your next IELTS exam, improve your English and communication abilities. And now you can download our academic IELTS help app from your Google Play Store or from iTunes. So finally we've released our app to the iTunes Apple Store, so you can check it out there. Look for Academic IELTS Help, look for our logo, download the app. There's a lot of good free goodies there for you. Some free listening exercises that are interactive, as well as reading exercises, strategies. You can access videos directly from the app as well. So do be sure to download the app and check that out. All right. If you're looking to get our books, you can do so from Amazon. Do a search for AE Helps Academic IELTS or GE Helps General IELTS. Okay. Hi, Rahul. Good to see you in class. Some members joining in. Excellent. If you have questions, comments, concerns about our products or about IELTS, don't be shy. Send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. That's my name, at aehelp.com, and I'll do my best to get back to you with some answers in a timely fashion. There's also writing, editing, and speaking services available on these websites that I put up here, so you can improve your writing and speaking skills for the IELTS. Also, before we start the lesson, here's a quick peek at our schedule for now. IELTS live streaming is according to Central European CET time. Hi Gary, good to see you. I sent you an email, check that out. Today, 21st, we're doing course part 20. Tomorrow, we're going to finish up the online course sessions with the last of the speaking strategies and examples, and then we'll do a members chat only on Sunday. On Monday, Tuesday, there's no class, and then we will be back on the 26th with more live streaming in the regular time. So, here is part one for IELTS speaking. For those of you who have been following the lessons, you know that IELTS speaking interview is 12 to 15 minutes face-to-face, and it has 3 parts. Each part is a little bit unique. You get instructions for what to do from the examiner. All right. So, before we get into these questions, let's discuss a little bit of strategy. So, speaking section, there's strategies that are specific to each part of the speaking test. Important points to keep in mind. For speaking part 1, some review here. We've already done this in the past couple of classes, but it's really important to keep in mind. It's very important to practice at home before you sit the IELTS. The first one, and here you have big letters in red, answer every question in full sentences, okay? The IELTS speaking interview is quite natural. It's very similar to a quality dialogue between people in everyday life, but there are some differences that are noteworthy and that you need to pay attention to. When we speak to each other in real life, when we meet with our friends or talk to our teachers or our parents, to each other, we often don't actually use full sentences to communicate because parts of sentences are understood from the context, from knowing each other, from the question that's being asked. But on IELTS, you must not omit the subject and controlling ideas of questions in your answers. So another way to say that is you need to use the question that you are asked in your answer, okay? So that's important to keep in mind. The other point to keep in mind for part one is the examiner will almost always follow up a question with why, asking you for the reason for your answer, or will include it in the original question. In either case, they expect that you give an explanation for your answer. So the examiner might say, what is your favorite sport? Or they might say, what is your favorite sport and why? Or they might say, what is your favorite sport? You will answer, and then they will say why after. The best way to answer is don't wait for that why question. Just give the answer right away. So have this very important word in your mind in part one, because. Okay. Now there are different ways to say because. You can also use the word since or as a result. Using synonyms to give causality is a good idea. It will help your score go up. So here the student answers, my favorite sport is soccer because it's great exercise and played with a team. Okay, so again, this is speaking. Make sure you're repeating after me, especially for the speaking questions and answers. So repeat as often as possible, nice and loud, so you can hear yourself. And the last point is stay calm, stay on topic, and pay close attention to your grammar and the tenses that you're using. Of course, those should reflect the question. So if the question is present perfect, your answer should be present perfect. If it's progressive, your answer should be progressive. Gary Brar, thanks for putting up that comment. Yeah, so as equals since equals because. Sometimes when students give reasons, they're always saying because. We do that as native speakers also. However, it's much nicer to replace the word because with other words, so don't overuse the word because. Let's take a look at some of these questions and apply a couple of these strategies. So you're in your speaking interview, you met the examiner, they asked you about your name, maybe they asked you if you're a student or if you're working, a couple of icebreaker questions, you gave some good answers for that, and now the examiner says, okay, for part one, let's talk about relatives. Now when the examiner mentions what you will talk about, relatives, right away, you should start to visualize your relatives. So think about grandma, think about grandpa. You should be thinking about them even earlier because you should try to see your examiner as grandma and grandpa, so you're speaking loud and clear. Think about your uncles, cousins, nephews, nieces. So all of those important pieces. Safa, I'm just reading your comment. You got a score of 6 on IELTS. That was your target. You made use of the information and tricks from the class. I'm very happy you did that. I'm very happy you reached your target, so congratulations, good for you. All right? And thanks for your comment as well, Soham. I appreciate that kind of feedback. All right, so when the examiner mentions this, let's talk about relatives, that gives you a few seconds to start thinking about that information. Your brain should be very focused when you're in this interview. And then they'll ask the first question. Again, repeat after me. How often do you see your relatives? Right away, when you see this how often, you need to think of adverbs of frequency. So always, usually, often, sometimes, and I am writing this in order of frequency, sometimes, rarely, never. Okay, so right away these words should be in your head as soon as you hear this how often, because you will need to use that in your answer. Now, see your relatives. That's the question. In everyday conversation, if my friend asked me this, I might be inclined to just simply say, oh, I see them a couple times a week. Okay? Now, on IELTS, that will not earn you marks, or it will not earn you enough marks to get a high band score. It's too simple, it's too quick. It's omitting the topic controlling idea of the question. So you need to use the full question in your answer. Okay, it's present tense, it's general, and of course, don't forget about the why. So when you explain to me how often you see your relatives, you should also explain to me why you see them always or often or rarely or never, okay? So you need to include that in your answer. All right, students, so here is your chance to give me a good answer to this question. Write it into the chat. I'll let you know if you're on the right track, and I will also correct your grammar and your word use. So give me some answers. I'm going to give you an answer as well at the same time, and we'll see how closely they match up. There are a lot of different answers that you can give, obviously. They just need to include these elements, okay? So Farah says, we usually see each other on special occasions like my brother's birthday party when most of my relatives come for the festivities. Farah, try not to repeat words in your response. So if you've said party once, don't say it again like 10 words later. It's just a little bit awkward, okay? Otherwise, it's pretty good. All right, Naveen says, well, I love to meet with my relatives frequently, but because of daily schooling, it becomes tough to get in touch with them as much as I would like to. Nevertheless, I usually interact with them on weekends. Okay, good, Naveen. And you can give an example as well. I haven't seen anybody include that. For instance, I hung out with my uncles, aunts, cousins last weekend for a fantastic barbecue at my grandpa's place, okay? So again, just repeat after me when you hear me say these responses and corrections. Rahul says, well, I often see my relatives as I am working. Rahul, I saw a mistake in there. You mixed the word often with rarely. Be very careful about that. It's contradicting, okay? Sinul says, well, I see my relatives rarely because I'm far away from my family these days for my work. So I only get in touch with them once or twice a year. The last time I saw my uncles was for New Year's about 9 months ago. Okay, so again, especially for those of you who are following these classes regularly, don't forget about the advice that I gave you in previous classes. Examples make your marks go up. Okay, so here's a correction from Rahul. Well, I often see my relatives as I'm working with a multinational company which is out of state, but we sometimes meet on special occasions. Rahul, you need to say, well, I rarely see my relatives. I assume you rarely see them because you're out of state, okay? So not often, but you rarely see them. All right, so I'll give an answer here as well. I often see my extended family once or twice a week because many of them also live in my hometown of Victoria. For instance, I got together with my uncles, aunts, and cousins last Saturday to celebrate my dad's birthday. Okay? So there is a solid answer. It includes all of the elements. I'm reflecting the question. I'm giving a reason of why. I'm using an adverb of frequency with often, and I'm including a nice example. So again, repeat after me. I often see my extended family once or twice a week because many of them also live in my hometown of Victoria. For instance, I got together with my uncles, aunts, and cousins last Saturday to celebrate my dad's birthday. Okay, so that is how you get a high band for part 1. You include these elements, you make sure you answer that why question. All right, let's pop back here to the instructions or the strategies, and let's keep going. Okay, so jumping right for speaking part 2 strategies. Speaking part 2 is, for a lot of students, the most stressful. It's probably because it's the least natural in our everyday life. As most of you are aware, we don't do, most of us anyway, 2-minute mini presentations to each other on different kinds of topics. So it's a less common situation to have to speak about an idea, a place, a person for a 2-minute span without any questions or interruption, and of course to make sure that it's sensible, okay? So here are some key strategies for part 2, okay? So when you're finished part 1, the examiner will say, that is the end of part 1. Now for part 2, I'm going to give you a card with some questions on it. You will have 1 minute to prepare your answers, and then you will have 2 minutes to speak. You can take notes in the 1 minute if you wish. Here's some note paper and a pencil. And then you get that card, okay? So we've been talking about role models in the past couple of classes for part 3. And that's coming from this part 2 question. So you'll get a card for part 2. It could have this kind of question on it where it says, describe a role model you have had in your life. You should say who the person is, his or her relation to you, what impact this person has had in your life, what makes them a role model, and then the instructions. You have 1 to 2 minutes to talk about this person. So you get this card, what do you do with it? What are the strategies that you need to implement in order to get a high score? Those are the right questions to ask, okay? Well, the first point here is make sure you clearly understand the topic and the controlling idea, okay? So try to paraphrase the subject. Try to say it in a different way, okay? So let's hop back here. What is the topic or the subject in this question? Describe a role model you have had in your life. So what's the topic? What's the subject here? Okay, so right away identify that. When you're looking at that, that part 2 card, then identify that topic. And hopefully, most of you will agree with Rahul Manga or Preeti that the topic here is a role model. Okay, now here is where you apply your critical thinking. Okay, so you think about what is it? So what is a role model? So it's somebody we look up to or we try to follow in their footsteps, right? That's a role model. So somebody who we look at, they're a model, sorry, role mode. They're a model, so it's someone that we model our lives after, right? Role means the role that they play in your life. So it's a person you admire, it's a person you respect, all right? Why? So the next question that you want to ask yourself is why? Why do you have a role model? So why is a person a role model? And now these are very important ideas. So remember, you have that 1 minute, and 1 minute is a lot of time if you use it well. So you have that 1 minute. In that 1 minute, you really need to think about this what, why, how for the topic or the subject, the role model. If you can come up with good answers in your mind and maybe pencil down some notes as well, you should be able to do okay as long as you've practiced at home. So why do we have why is a person a role model? Yes, they inspire, but why are they a role model? Okay, maybe they're successful. So Rekha says it could be because they're successful. Sure. Now, successful is still an abstract term. So when you're thinking of good communication, don't just think abstract, but think concrete. Abstract means that it's difficult to touch or to define, to explain. Success is an idea. Success is not something that we can really hold or that we can touch. So try to think about more specific words that are concrete, that are quantitative, not just qualitative, that define the idea of success. Okay, so take that extra step. Okay, so Sarah says maybe it's because they work hard and they're honest. So to keep that more simple, it's their attitude. And the attitude can be defined as work long hours, positive, smile often. Okay, so those are the concrete. Successful could be something like has lots of money, famous, okay, liked by many people. All right, so that could be some more concrete ways to understand the concept of success. So we like their success, we like their attitude, right? So their values, they're positive people, sure. Okay, and how? So the next question is, how is the person a role model? Okay, so we do what they do, or we take steps to reach the same or similar goals. All right, so that could be the how. Okay, great. So again, remember here, the strategy for part 2, the focus here is that as soon as you get that card, identify the topic or the subject here. It's the role model. And then think about the what, why, how. Also, don't forget the controlling idea. It's just as important. If you get this question, for instance, and you talk for 2 minutes about role models and how they're amazing and people need them and some of the famous or popular role models these days in the media and on TV, you will not get a good score. Why? So if I spend 2 minutes talking about role models and about the success of role models and what it takes to be a role model, and some popular role models and some examples of role models these days, I'll probably still get a very low score, like a 4.5 or a 5. Why? It's not off topic, Farah. So Farah says, I did that. It's not quite off topic. I'm talking about the right topic because the topic is role model, so it's not off topic. Urvashi says it should be about a role model in your life. Right. So the interesting point here, Farah, you had the right idea, I think. It's just different, the actual answer. You're not off topic because the topic is role model. You're off controlling idea. Okay, so you don't just need to be on topic, you also need to be on the controlling idea. And I think that's where a lot of students lose themselves, is they stay on the topic but not on the controlling idea. And it's important to recognize that. So here, the question is asking about a role model you have had in your life. So your answer has to include that. So pay attention to that part, okay? You really need to pay attention to that. And Farah, yeah, I was picking apart your words there. I assume that you meant off topic by your, I'm not talking about somebody in my life. But if we're being very technical, I'm actually on topic if I talk about a role model. I'm just off quote unquote topic because I'm not talking about the right controlling idea. Okay, and Millions Production, definitely choose somebody simple and easy. Choosing your mother is a good answer, okay? So my mother is my role model is a good answer. All right, let's go back here for a little bit more before we get into deeper more expanded answer. So again, you need to make sure that you focused in on the topic as well as the controlling idea. If you're having trouble understanding it, try to paraphrase it. Try to say it in your own words, okay? That way you will make sure that you have the idea. Try to visualize it. So try to see this information before you start to write down your notes, and definitely before you start speaking. Okay, so if I'm talking about a role model, and let's say that I choose my father as my role model, then I still need to visualize my father. So I need to see a picture of my dad in my head, and I need to recall memories that I have with him visually, and his attitude, and what he's done in life, and the reasons for him being a role model, and some specific situations, like maybe driving on the highway, there's somebody on the side of the road, their car broke down, so my dad pulled over, got out, and helped the individual change their tire or fix the engine. So he showed kindness, he showed compassion, right? So think visually of specific situations, okay? It's a good idea to have your first sentence ready before your 1 minute note-taking time is up, okay? A lot of students get a lot of good ideas for their answer for part 2, but they don't actually think about a sentence to start talking with in the 2 minutes. So the examiner will say, okay, your 1 minute preparation time is up. Please begin speaking. And often it will catch students off guard, and the student will go, I gotta, just a second, and they kind of do that, or they give this blank stare, and I've seen both. And it's kind of shocking because that initial impact of, okay, start speaking, the students will often waste 15, 20 seconds just trying to search for that first sentence. So it's not good. If you have to write it down on the note paper, then just write down on the note paper your first sentence so you can get going right away, okay? Don't waste that first 20 seconds. Now, here's another interesting point. Okay, so and we'll get to these questions here and give a nice answer for this part 2 in a moment. So many students will do something like this, and I've seen this often when students are doing practice interviews. They'll do this. They'll focus in on the topic, and they'll go, many people have role models in their, just a second, I'll get you back on screen here. They'll do something interesting and quite unnecessary, in fact, quite damaging or not optimal to get a good high mark. Okay? So they'll do something like this, where they'll go, many people have role models in their lives. They look up to role models because these people are successful. Today, I would like to talk about a role model that I have had in my life. My role model is my father. Okay? So here is a common kind of start that I've seen to Part 2 cue cards. So this is a common kind of beginning where the student takes the subject, the role model, and they'll start by saying some kind of a general statement, like many people have role models in their lives. And then they talk about that a little bit more. They'll say people look up to role models because they are successful. And then they'll say, today I would like to talk about a role model that I would have had in my life. And then some people will even thank the examiner. They'll say, thank you for asking me this question. That's very nice and very kind, but it's bad, okay? It's bad because you're not actually answering the question. You're wasting time talking about a different idea, just like I did before when I was focusing on the subject. So this first part here is completely unnecessary. Okay? Why? Why is this first part unnecessary? Two reasons. This is not answering the question. I'm not talking about if people have role models in their lives. So if we look at the card does not ask, do people have role models in their life? The card has, describe a role model you have had in your life. So it's off the controlling idea, okay? And then here the student says, today I would like to talk about a role model that I have had in my life. You don't need to say that, and you're right, Naveen, it's absolutely redundant. You don't need to say, today I would like to talk about a role model I've had in my life, because that's what the question is asking you. Describe a role model you have had in your life. I know that's what you're going to talk about. So what you need to do is, instead of all of that useless kind of introduction, just start with this bit here. So directly answer that first question. I'm going to capitalize that so it really hits home. Directly answer the first question. Maybe have it ready on your notes, and definitely have it ready before the examiner asks you to start speaking. Okay, practice this at home. And I know that some classes and some teachers give these instructions, like thank them for the question and introduce the topic and repeat that topic. No, you're not getting points for that, okay? So don't do that, all right? And I see lots of good ideas, students. Some of you are already trying to answer these questions, which is great. Keep those in mind because they'll be useful later. Manoj, a huge congratulations to you. Good job, Manoj Kumar. 8 points, or band 8, I'm assuming, is what you got on IELTS. Using our products, that's an excellent score. Even difficult for a native speaker, or many native speakers, to get a band 8 average. So good for you. That definitely shows a strong English skill level. So congratulations. And thanks for that feedback, by the way. We love hearing the success of our students. All right. So again, just start with the sentence. My role model is my father. Now, it's still not perfect. Why? Because the question is using present perfect, have had, okay, in your life. So right away, reflect that in your first sentence. Pay attention to the grammar of that main question and reflect it. A role model I have had, or I've had in my life, is my father. That should be your first sentence when you're responding to this question. Right away, you answer, you target the main question directly with, it's my father. You show me the grammar, a role model I've had in my life. So there's the present perfect grammar. Great. That's a solid start. Okay. Then that's what you're going forward from. All right. That's what you need to do. Okay, so again, remember, understand the topic controlling idea, visualize it, and have your first sentence ready. That's in the 1 minute preparation time. Now, when you're thinking about the topic, the controlling idea, you need to use your critical thinking. You need to think about what, why, and how. So here, I need to think about why is my father the role model? How is he a role model? Okay, so these are two questions that I would need to consider in that 1 minute preparation time. So why is my father a role model? And how is he a role model? Okay, so those are questions to really consider before you begin speaking. What a lot of students do in part 2 is they're focusing only on the questions they see on the card. So they're thinking, okay, who the person is. Well, I just told the guy it's my father. his or her relation to you. Okay, well, I just told the person that they're my father, so I've already answered those two questions with one sentence. What impact this person has had on my life? Okay, I'll talk about that. And what makes them a role model? I'll talk about that. So that's great. You should always answer these questions clearly, but don't think that this is everything that you have or this is everything that you need to pay attention to. If you think about the what, the why, the how, you will answer at least 80–90% of this information. And the structure will be much better. So you will have much better flow in the information. Okay? So, think about the what, why, how. Keep visualizing. And this is what gives your information coherence. So this is what gives it structure. Oftentimes, if you're trying to answer just the questions on the cue card one by one, it doesn't connect very well. It's a little bit of an awkward response. So careful not to do that. And then to improve your mark further, to make it even better, make sure to join your sentences, join your ideas, okay? So join your ideas with coordinating conjunctions, correlative conjunctions, and subordinating conjunctions. Most of you are quite familiar with this group, the and, but, yet, so, nor, or. Many of you are familiar with the subordinating group, although this is quite a big group, like as, result, however, although, since, while, when, if. But many students don't use this group, the correlative conjunctions, and this group is very good. Okay, correlative conjunctions are really nice to use in communication, not only but also, whether, or, neither, nor. So when you're practicing at home, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to practice using this group of joining words to join your ideas and your sentences smoothly and to emphasize the information, to make the information nice and strong. Not only is my father my role model because he's hardworking, but he's also my role model because he's a very intelligent man. Okay? It emphasizes the fact that not only does he work hard, but he's a very clever guy. So makes it much more connected, much more nice. Okay? Yes, Naveen, absolutely you want to use adjective clauses as well. Okay? Gil Star, I highly recommend booking a practice speaking interview with us on the website. It's $25 US, but it's very well worth it. All students who have used that service have said that they've really benefited, and their band scores go up at least a half band, to, if not one band, just from one session. So I can help to identify why you're getting such a low mark in the speaking aside from the other sections, okay? So use that service. All right, so let's keep going here. Here are some important techniques to master for part 2. You have to practice timing, okay? So you have to have a good sense of what it means to have 1 minute to prepare your ideas. You really need to have a good sense of what is 90 seconds or 120 seconds of speaking, okay? Make sure that you answer all of the questions on the card. You can stretch your answers by adding questions like what, why, how, when, where, who. So think of those follow-up questions to the questions that you see on the card. Think of specific and easy answers. A very dangerous decision for part 2 is when students think about a difficult answer, okay? So they think of a role model like, let's say Elon Musk, who they might not know a lot about, or who deals in a very complex field of technology, and then they try to get into explanations, they get into trouble, and they mess up a lot, and they get a lower mark. So don't necessarily think of the truth. Don't necessarily think of somebody famous, but think of somebody easy. Sometimes famous people are easy, so it's good to consider that, but think of easy answers, okay? Choose an easy answer always, all right? Pay attention to connecting the information, as we just mentioned, conjunctions, and as somebody added, Naveen, I think, adjective clauses are very important as well. And do continue speaking until the examiner stops you, okay? So don't just stop. If you have more time, keep talking. Now, oftentimes students will just pause. I've had students where they just stop after a minute or even after 30 seconds. What should you do if you're suddenly stuck, you don't know what to say, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to say anymore, and you just stop? What should you do? Golzoda, you should focus on the topic and just start talking about the topic if you can't understand the controlling idea. If you can't understand the topic either, pay attention to the other questions. Try to figure it out. Okay? Sarah, don't ask about the time. Adjectives, clauses, Gilstar, are like cars which drive quickly on the highway. So, which drive quickly on the highway is an adjective clause. Okay, so again, what do I do in part 2 if I'm stuck and suddenly I can't speak and there's still time? We're not talking about part 1 or part 3, ladies and gentlemen. So, Miriam, I'm not talking about part 1 or part 3 where you can ask for the next question. I'm talking about part 2, the cue card, where you have those questions in front of you. The examiner just started your 2 minutes. You've been speaking for 1 minute. You feel like you've answered all the questions maybe, or you don't know what to say. What should you do? So you can't say that, Shabeen, because we're still in part 2. Okay? Naveen, I'm not sure if you're responding with the you're welcome or not, but that won't work. Farah says the first good answer there is check your notes, okay? So check your notes, check the questions, absolutely. So when you get stuck for part 2, okay? So if you're stuck for part 2, you're stuck during the 2 minutes speaking in part 2. Look at your notes and big and here, and the questions on the card. Okay, now if you're one of those students who has quite good English skills and you have answered the questions on the card, then what else can you do? Okay, so a lot of students forget to look at the card and forget to look at their notes while they're giving the response. You should use your notes and you should use your card, as I said in the last class, during the 2 minutes. Now, let's say that you've answered all the questions on the card. You were very quick. You were able to do it in 1 minute, and you're looking at those questions and you're going, okay, I've answered all those. You're looking at your notes and you're thinking, I've pretty much said everything out of my notes, and there's still time. So what can you do then? If you feel like you've answered all the questions, you've used all the information on your notes, what can you do then? So Stylist Mian has the right answer. You can elaborate, okay? So if you think, or if you have answered all questions on the card and used all of your notes and you still have time, elaborate. Okay, the word elaborate for some of you might be new. It means stretch it out. So elaborate. Think of other questions. And examples. Okay. So many times when I'm listening to students give a part 2 response and they feel like they're finished, and they're just kind of looking at me like, okay, stop me, examiner, please help me out, just stop me, and start asking me part 3 questions. In my head, as the examiner, I'm just thinking, give me an example, come on, just paint me a picture, give me an example of what you just told me, just paint me a picture. And the student's going, just stop me, ask me part 3 questions. The student should be the one who bends and should start giving an example, okay, so that your mark can go up nice and high, okay? So very good response there, Mumtaji Mohammed Mehdi, with imagine an example. Absolutely, okay? All right, so there it is. Include examples, and be sure to answer that last question. One of the most common mistakes that I see students make in part 2 is they forget the last question. So they answer all the questions very nicely, and then they forget this last one. What makes them a role model? Always answer that last question. Often on the card, you will see that as kind of a separate sentence. So you'll have 3 questions listed, and then you'll have that separate final big question. That's a very important question. Make sure to have that included, okay? Hi, Jack Yang. Good to see you in class. All right. So here are some very important notes for you when you are getting ready for IELTS. IELTS Part 2 can be mostly divided into 4 categories. I've said this lots of times before. It's generally going to be either a person, a place, an object, or an event. In some cases, it's an idea, okay? But think of person, place, object, event, idea. Those are going to be the categories, and then within that category they'll ask you something more specific, like a role model if it's a person, a famous athlete in your country, somebody who has changed something in your life, a past teacher, a best friend. So within those 4 or 5 categories, you can get into more specifics, but you need to understand these key points. When you're talking about a person, you need to explain the person according to their appearance, what they look like. Here's some vocabulary. They can be tall, short, skinny, fat, bald, long brown hair, well-built, nice big smile, round brown eyes, big blue eyes. So lots of different ways to describe appearance. Well-dressed, clean cut. Okay. And then personality. So they're kind, they're greedy, they're helpful, they're strict, they're hardworking. And of course, there's lots of other words for personality, honest, and so on. Make sure you know a lot of those. And then their actions. So what does this person do? What is their hobby? Do they do volunteer work? What's their family life like? Okay. So what do they do in the real world? All right. When you include these 3 pieces of information talking about a person, no matter if it's a role model or if it's your best friend or if it's a teacher that you had, it creates a very clear picture. It organizes the information very nicely, and it's a very high level response. Now here's something very important to remember, okay? When you're talking about a person, personality is always backed up by action, okay? So if I say that my father is my role model, he is an extremely empathetic person. For instance, a couple of years back when I was driving down the highway with him and we saw somebody on the side of the road whose car broke down, he asked me to pull over, and immediately he got out of the car, asked the person what they needed help with, and then changed their tire so that they could be on their way. So I said that my father's empathetic or sympathetic, and then explain that with an example of empathy or an example of sympathy. Most of us have been in a situation where the car broke down and we needed somebody else's help, so that person can empathize, okay? So Personality always backed up by action. Don't just jump around in personality and then in action, because that's confusing. So when you say they're honest, give an example of honest. When you say they're successful, give an example of successful with their actions. Okay? All right, so that's describing a person. Now, same kind of concept, but a little bit different when you're describing a place. Okay? When you're describing a place, you need to think about its location. Where is it? So in this sense, it's identifying clearly for your listener to be able to visualize where it is. Is it in the country? Is it a busy school district? Is it on the seaside or near the ocean or on a lake? Okay? So think about that. Think about the appearance. Is it old? Is it modern? Is it high, wide, low, deep? If you're asked to describe your home, you might want to describe that it's a large home. It has 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and 2 kitchens. Okay, so again, back it up with description. With a place, you want to include history. When was it built? Has it changed? Has it been used by different people over the centuries? So the history of the building. And of course the function. What is it used for? What do people do there? Is it a recreation center? Do people play sports or games there? Is it used for education? Do people learn there? Is it visited by tourists? So explain the function of that place, okay? So again, no matter what place you're describing, as long as you include this information in your 2 minutes, you should be on the right track, doing a good job. Just make sure to pay attention to those questions, okay? All right. If you practice this at home, it becomes quite easy. And I've had a lot of students who have practiced this for a few hours and have said, wow, yeah, that really makes a lot of sense, and it's just made part 2 so much easier for me to structure and give a coherent, quick response. So just thinking about those key elements, okay? And then, of course, the third category here, object. So part 2 might be something like talk about a gift that you received that you really liked. Talk about something that you lost. Talk about an object that you use every day. Talk about a famous invention. Talk about new technology used in education. So lots of different subtopics within objects, okay, within items. And again, you need to think about the appearance. What does it look like? Okay, so talk about a modern invention that's changing the world. So the students, as many students do, they start talking about their smartphone. And a lot of students can talk about the smartphone, but not a lot of students can talk about smartphones in a well-organized, clear, coherent way. So again, don't think that your listener knows what you know. Your listener is like an alien. They're smart, but they don't know what you know, okay? So here, you might start off with the smartphone is revolutionizing the way the world works these days. It's, in fact, a tiny computer about the size of a small notebook that fits into a person's pocket. It's very smooth. It's glass on one or both sides. One side of it is a digital display, like a small TV screen where information is shown to the user. Okay, now you're probably thinking, geez, Adrian, who are you talking to? Like a 2-year-old or somebody from planet Mars? Exactly, that's exactly who I'm talking to. I'm showing my ability for communication in English. All right, so talk about its history. When did you get it? Where does it come from? Did you buy it? Did you build it? Did you find it? So what's the past of this object? That's very important. And talk about its application. What is it used for? Is it used for fun? Is it used for school, work? Is it used to help people? For convenience, for comfort? So appearance, history, application when talking about an object. As long as you think about these, you should be on the right track and you should be able to do a good job, okay? And again, give specific examples like mobile phones are changing the way the police work because these days civilians are able to take videos and pictures of criminals anywhere, anytime. For instance, there was burglaries happening in my neighborhood last year, and one of my friends who was walking his dog during the night took a photo of a strange person who was knocking on someone's door. It turned out to be one of the burglars, and the police was able to apprehend him. So include those examples to back up the information that you give. All right? Now, last one here, I believe, is describing an event. So you could get a part 2 question that's asking you about something that happened in your life, the best celebration that you've experienced, or an important meeting that you attended, a disappointing family gathering. Okay, so there could be a lot of different subcategories within the event. Again, when you're talking about an event, you can think about location. So where did it happen? Did it happen at home? At John's house? Did it happen in a club downtown? On the beach in Florida? Be specific, okay? The more specific, the better it is. Stylist Mian, if you practice this at home, it doesn't take time, it saves you time, and it will build the right structure for your response. If you're answering these points, you are answering 80 to 90% of the information requested by the cue card, okay? So keep that in mind, all right? And then who are the people, the attendees, who were at this event? My childhood friends were at this event. My coworkers were there. My extended family. So who went to this event? Tourists, visitors, strangers. Okay, so who were the people at the event? And of course, the activities. What did you do? Were you singing? Did you play sports like football? Were you dancing? What kind of dancing? How many people were dancing? How was the music? Were you mingling, networking, talking to other people, making new business contacts? Were you eating, laughing? So all of those activities are very important, okay? And then, of course, examples. Many of my high school friends came and we played tennis. It is a sport many of us enjoyed in school, so include the example, all right? Okay. So, we're not going to jump to part 3 strategies just yet. If we have some time, I'll get back to that at the end. Let's continue with this answer now. We'll do a full answer for this part 2. So, describe a role model that you have had in your life. You should say who the person is, his or her relation to you, what impact this person has had on your life, what makes them a role model. So, here we've already expressed that a role model I've had in my life is my father. And now, what should I do next? So I've said, okay, my father is my role model that I've had in my life. What should I do next? Rahul is giving me an answer. He's saying, I had my grandfather as a role model in my life. He is a bald man of ripe age of 87. He's hardworking and honest. For example, one day he found a wallet on the street and handed it over to the police, even though he didn't have much money, and could have used it to buy some food. Sure, Rahul, that's a good start if you're talking about your grandfather. I would do similar for my father. What should I think about? So Deep Kaur says, think about his qualities. Yeah, absolutely. Think about his appearance first. Why is it good to think about the appearance? Or why is it good to say just a few words about the appearance if you're talking about a person? Girls and guys, so why is that good? Miriam says, talk about his personality, give some examples. Why is it good to say a few things about what he looks like? So, he is a tall man with dark hair, a mustache, and a beard. And a beard, always wears a smile on his face. So why is it good for me to just include that one sentence? It's only taking about 7-8 seconds of my 2 minutes, which is a lot of time. Okay? So Sue says it makes the examiner involved in the conversation. Absolutely. Joe Martin says, well, the examiner can imagine who you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. We humans are visual beings primarily. We see the world around us. It's our main experience of our surroundings. So we like to put a face to the information. So absolutely, it just gives us a quick, clear picture of who we're talking about. Yeah, it allows our listener to visualize, okay? My father is a very hard-working man. He has completed over 20 years of formal education and has been working as a family physician for the past 25 years. Not only this, but he is extremely kind and generous. When some patients are unable to pay for his treatment, he does not go after them for money, but gives his service for free. For instance, last week, a poor farmer broke his arm on the field, fixing the fence, and my father put it in a cast without demanding payment. Okay, so here I'm just kind of ripping along. We're slowly running out of time, but I really want to show you what I'm saying here with the think about the appearance, think about their personality, and back it up with actions. Now, is this enough for me to get a good score? Obviously not. I haven't reached my 2 minutes yet, and I haven't necessarily answered the questions. I want to be careful not to go off track, right? So his or her relation to you, I don't need to answer that because it's my father, so the relationship is already answered. That's already clear who the person is. I've talked about that by saying that he's my father, and also by stating what he looks like. What impact this person has had on my life? I want to make sure that I answer that. So definitely, if I look at the card at this point in my speaking and look at my notes, then I'm going to go, aha, okay, I have to be careful to make sure that I answer this question. So I can say, clearly, my father has impacted many aspects of my life, and the person I am today is thanks to his parenting. I am also working hard to achieve my life goals. Currently, I study biology in university. So, in some sense, I'm following in my father's footsteps. However, I plan to be a microbiologist instead of a doctor or a physician. Physician. There we go. And then I can continue by reflecting what I said about his kindness. I have also learned the value of helping those in need from my dad. Every Tuesday, I volunteer at the local children's hospital and read books to sick kids. Okay? So I'm making sure that I'm answering that question, okay? I know I have a couple of grammatical mistakes there. There should be an apostrophe there to show possession. I'll do that in a minute. But the goal here is to show you how I'm answering these questions. Now, am I done? Maybe, maybe not. If I still have time, especially, I need to make sure that I look at these questions again to make sure that I'm answering them all. So this last one here, what makes them a role model? So I want to wrap up what I'm saying by answering that last question. I believe that my father's personality, I believe that not only my father's attitude towards life, but his achievements as well make him an excellent role model for me. Okay? So now, clearly, I have a good, solid response to this question. I go through the appearance, I go through his personality, backed up by actions. I keep checking back to the questions in my notes, making sure that I answer all those elements as well at the end. And I have a solid answer that will get me a nice high mark. Of course, paying attention to a lot of other strategies, such as using the grammar that's reflected in the question, the present perfect, using different kinds of conjunctions that we talked about. Don't worry about the spelling mistakes, Akas. We're focusing on the speaking right now. That's just typos because I'm typing quickly. Otherwise, you'll be very bored. So here we go. Just look at this response with me. Repeat after me. Again, a little bit of speaking practice here at the end. So nice and loud, repeat what I say. A role model I've had in my life is my father. He is a tall man with dark hair, a mustache, and a beard. Always wears a smile on his face. Well, my father is definitely a very hardworking man. He has completed over 20 years of formal education, and he's been working as a family physician for the past 25 years. Not only this, but he's extremely kind and generous. When some patients of his are unable to pay for their treatment, he doesn't go after them for money, but gives his service for free. I can say one example. I know that last week there was a really nice local farmer who's unfortunately very poor, and he broke his arm fixing the fence in his field. And of course, he was in a lot of pain, but my father put his arm into a cast and gave him some painkillers and didn't ask for any payment for this service because he knew the man didn't have the money. Clearly, my father has impacted many aspects of my life, and the person I am today is thanks to his parenting and his guidance. I'm now also working hard to achieve my life goals. Currently, I study biology in university, so I can say that I'm somewhat following in my father's footsteps. However, I'm planning to be a microbiologist, so not quite a physician. I've also learned the value of helping those in need from my dad. Every Tuesday, I volunteer at a local children's hospital and read books to sick children. I think that not only my father's attitude towards life, but also his many, many achievements make him an excellent role model for me. Okay, so I made some corrections there, made some adjustments to make it more natural, more accurate, but that in a nutshell will get you a high band score paying attention to those scores. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for today. Lots and lots of information for you there to practice. Again, check out our websites, aehelp.com, gieltshelp.com. If you're studying for academic IELTS, please go to aehelp.com. It has this blue background. Click that big red Join Now button. When you do that and make that small payment, it will very much help you not to have to sit the IELTS exam again. Lots of great videos, pre-recorded professional videos, professional exams, interactive course there for you. If you're studying general IELTS, please do the same, but go to this website here. It's gieltshelp.com. Click on that big red button. Make use of the website. You can use it on your phone or your tablet as well. You can get our books from Amazon. And thank you, members, for your support. Naveen, Rahul, Gary Brar, new member, thank you. Thanks for supporting us. It lets us help you and help a lot of other students as well. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Have an amazing night. Good sleep, good restful sleep. Wake up tomorrow charged and energized, ready to practice all of these skills and strategies in your communication. Much love to all of you. Bye for now. See you tomorrow, same time.